It's another journey, and today's journey is a seasoned psychedelic integration coach who healed her own PTSD through MDMA-assisted therapy. As the founder of the Journey Sage, our guest is out purpose-driven individuals turn mystical insight into grounded, lasting growth. Our guest's career has spanned over 25 years, from classrooms to corporate boardrooms, whether guiding students or leading tech initiatives at Microsoft and Amazon. Our guest is always out to people find clarity, confidence, and their next step forward. So our guest brings the wisdom of experience from her own healing, her work with many different medicines, and a deep respect for the path each person takes. Her approach combines trauma-informed care, somatic integration, and clear, compassionate guidance. So that's all the notes I got, and I don't have any notes. But welcome, Jill, to the journey.
Well, thank you, David. I think that was a pretty comprehensive bio, to be honest with you, and I'm happy to fill in the holes that need to be filled in.
That's how I do it. And as I said, no more notes. And I'm showing my hands to show I got no more notes. So journeys begin. Journeys begin at a young age for some people. It's like there's always something in school, there's something in childhood that kicks their thinking and process more, because when you're younger, your mind is more susceptible to things being around. What was the earliest memories for you that kickstarted your journey?
Well, just to warn the audience, I grew up in a very abusive household, a very neglectful household. My father was physically and mentally abusive. My mother was clinically depressed, suicidal most of her life. So the very earliest memory I have is, or the biggest, earliest memory is probably around 3, when my father was throwing me around the room because I was trying to protect my mother from getting beaten. And that's a very poignant memory and an important memory for a whole bunch of reasons. There's been layers of trauma around it. What I'll say in reference to your questions about how did the journey start, there was a very, very early time, and I know during that memory, where I said to myself, I am not going to be like my parents. I don't know what I'm going to be like, but I'm not going to live or be like this. And so people have often asked me kind of, and as the story unfolds, you'll understand why people ask me, like, kind of, what was your motivation, or why are you so focused on doing X, Y, Z? And it's because from a very early age, I knew I did not want to live a certain way. And that was actually how my parents were living.
Yeah, and I know I will put the disclaimer if there is trigger points. It's just not intentional to trigger you. It's just to inform you. And what we do talk about is to inspire people to be feeling safe and understand that there is ways of coping, and there is help out there. And there is loads of organizations worldwide that help with mental health of that sort of trauma. So obviously you grew older, you learned to not be like your parents.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel like there was times as you was growing up that you felt like you were going that way, or did you just tend to feel like you learned I can be my own person?
I don't know if I felt I could be my own person. I had 19 years of neglect and abuse. What I was very focused on was not my journey. I was very, very focused on getting out of poverty. I was very, very focused on having a sense of safety and security. Neither one of my parents were kind of able to do that. And I was also very focused on how can life get better? And that was not something that my parents, I think, even understood the potential of. They weren't brought up that way. I've got a lot more empathy for my parents now after all of my healing. So, in this context of this question, yeah, no, I was absolutely not going to. I didn't know how. I didn't know how it looked. I didn't know how it was going to get done. I just knew I didn't want to live the way that they had lived while I was exposed to them for the first 19 years of my life. And 19 is kind of the cutoff because I was on my own by the time I was 19.
Yeah, and I know from my past experience, and it's a relatable thing, traumas when you are a child from parents always will live with you as you get older. Now, example on that was if I did something wrong when I was younger, the punishment usually got me shouted at by, and I'm not saying she did it intentionally because she was a single mum, but she shouted at me, and then I was always told when we went places I had to sit in the corner with my back to them. It's like I didn't exist in that respect.
Hmm.
Even though I was in the room, I was present. My mum always used to say, you can't face us, you can't watch the TV, even though the TV was on and I could hear it in the background of, I could hear it. The symptomatic was I was in that corner, I couldn't engage, I couldn't do anything. I just had to be quiet in that corner.
Was this during a timeout, like a timed timeout strategy, or is this
It
like
was, it
you were
was,
there
ri-
for an hour?
it was when I did some, if I did something wrong, if I was in the
Yeah,
road,
so a
grab,
timeout.
yeah,
Oh,
it was time
you
out.
weren't there for like an hour or two, right? You were
I
there
was
for
there, for
five
example,
minutes.
if I was with my mum visiting her friends, I was there for all the old duration.
Oh, well, I would
And
I
and
would
like
say
I
something to look at.
and like I said, I'm not condoning my mum. And if she ever watches or listens to what I'm talking, it's not condoning her, but it's the memories that I have and just memories that I was in that corner. And memories of me not being able to interact. And I feel like that's one reason why I feel like I don't have good interaction skills with people in the place outside my four walls now because of me being so suppressed of you can't talk, you can't be this, you can't be that. Now, as I got older, the punishment got to the stage where you're in there while I'm talking in there. I was able to do things, but I still wasn't able to be myself. Even though I was being punished, I still wasn't be able to be myself.
Hmm.
So that's how it's relatable in that sense. And the mental abuse, if you want to call it mental abuse, is just the fact that I was treated differently. And as I got older, my mum always used to say, it's because I didn't know this about you. I didn't know about you. And I feel like if she went to places and understood how I was as a person, she wouldn't have been so bad. I know, yes, being a single mother is difficult. Don't get me wrong. Being a single parent is difficult. I can imagine for anyone. But if she took time for me to understand me and understood David as his needs, I wouldn't be the way I am now.
Well, I would actually add that that's probably 50% of it.
Mm,
The other 50% is where mom came from and how mom grew up. That very one of the reasons I didn't have children, one of the reasons, there are many, is that I was very aware that I did not know how to parent because I was not parented well. Ironically, I then went to become a high school English teacher and I was fine there. Once they're real people, I was fine, right? But I was very aware that I did not have the parental skills needed because I had zero exposure to little kids. And the only experience I had was my own upbringing, which I knew was not normal. And so, what I would offer to you is, yes, it would have been lovely if mom had the capacity to really get to know you. I'm finding more and more that parents are operating at the highest level that they possibly can.
mm.
And for some of them, that's unfortunately a very, very low bar because they were not parented well. So I hope that brings a little bit of relief that
It does.
mom was doing her best. It just really wasn't very good, and she
Mm.
wasn't I was not aware that it was not very good.
And I know, like I said, I'm not a trained psychologist or psychiatrist, but from the way I understand it, from what I've understood over the years, the reason it was difficult for my mum was because my late grandmother had my mum at a later age. So it was that age gap where
There you go.
now me and my mum, there's 17 years difference. So that's a more relatable example that we can get on in the ideal world. I'm not saying we get on because we don't get on, but in the ideal world, 17 years difference is better than my mum's 17 years older than me. Grandmother was 40, so she was 17 when she had me, and my grandmother was 45, I think, when she had my mum. So you
Big
can
difference.
see, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things on my journey, since we're talking about the whole journey, is I did not know, like you're very aware of the potential for trauma with some of the things that your mother did.
Mm.
I knew I had a bad childhood. My mother attempted suicide multiple times. I was thrown out of houses. I was food insecure. Like I knew I didn't have a good childhood. I did not know that that was powering my life. That was kind of like the internal programming of my life, very anxious, very focused on safety. And I lost in midlife, my 40s, I lost my long term partner, Carl. And I learned that he was actually the person who regulated me. And about a year and a half after he passed, I had this horrendous, irrational panic attack that sent me back to my therapist, who had been helping me with the grief work. And I was diagnosed with PTSD due to childhood trauma. I was totally, really? Have you met me? I'm, Microsoft. I got my own house. Da, da, da. But trust me, I had PTSD, and she was the one who said, "Let's look at MDMA therapy for PTSD." MDMA being the psychedelic on the street known as Molly. And at the time, there were two clinical trials that showed that like 3/4 of the people in that clinical trial no longer had a PTSD diagnosis at the end of 3 cycles of MDMA therapy. And one of the reasons I'm talking to folks like you and explaining the journey is that I went through that therapy underground. It completely changed my life. It was FDA delayed in August of 2024. Now, with this administration, we might see things move a little faster. And in the States, we have what I think it's on average 15-ish veterans a day committing suicide. And this therapy has been shown to help people with PTSD. And so that's why I talk about it. That's kind of my bird's eye view of my journey.
Yeah, and it's like you say in your, the bio, it says about this psychedelic integration, and that is how many things seem to be, apart from AI, that is how many people feel like it helps nowadays, is to go into controlled drug use, as I will use it, because it's not uncontrolled, it
Controlled
is,
medical procedure is how I would
yeah.
say.
So, I'm not trained in what I believe. I can just give the opinion, and the opinion is I just believe it's a way forward instead of taking the traditional medications that you normally have.
Well, I mean, it's a really good question I get all the time because people only see kind of the after and they're like, well, why didn't you go the traditional route? I did. I was in talk therapy. I was on a Wellbutrin prescription, which is an antidepressant, and I continued to get worse. And so there's all this talk where, well, we already have solutions for PTSD. Well, if we did, we wouldn't have veterans committing suicide at the level that they would, and at level that they are. And I can say I went the traditional route. I had zero drug in quotation marks, because I don't really think psychedelics are drugs the way we think about drugs.
Mm.
I had zero experience. I was not going to go do an ayahuasca journey in the middle of Peru and mess with my head. This is a very different healing paradigm that we need more people like me and you to be talking about, to explain to people so that the stigma of psychedelics can go away. in and be exchanged with the over 200 clinical trials that are happening like as we speak. So
Yeah.
that's why I chatted about.
And, the increased usage of, CBD and THC, Delta 9,
Mhm.
it's more pronounced nowadays because people tend to lean to that more because it's a easier alternative than, like I said, taking the mainstream medications.
A lot of
And I know people, and I'm not going to say names for respect of their privacy, but they know what I'm talking about. But they take THC gummies or they take Delta 9 gummies just because it helps them get through, the random day if they act feeling crap.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a addictive thing because it can be addictive if you take it regularly. But if you self-regulate in such a way that you can say, okay, on a Monday I won't have it, on a Wednesday I might have it, on a Thursday I might not have it. Have it alternate and then feeling good about yourself.
Well, so this is a really good segue to let's be really specific about what I'm talking about. MDMA therapy is the actual medical procedure of going to work with two doctors, and one my therapist, another one a guide, male and a female. And I take the MDMA capsule when I'm with them, capsules when I'm with them. We have the 5 to 8 hour journey. MDMA is kind of a long journey at a therapeutic dose. And then there's no more MDMA. So we've had probably a couple of months of talk therapy and preparation. We have that one day with using the psychedelic and probably a bit of mild talk therapy during that day. And then is the integration time, which is a time period afterward. So the patient doesn't go to like a CVS and get a prescription for a psychedelic. That's not the way it works. I had to go to a place that was safe, that was I wanted to say the word secure. I don't know why secure came to mind, but it was safe. It wasn't a hospital bed that I could fall off of. It was a beautiful journey room with lots of different spaces. We repeated that cycle 3 times over the course of a year. I mean, the first journey was September, the second journey was December, the third journey was May. So I think it's really important that when people hear psychedelic assisted psychotherapy, this is not like an SSRI that you're taking it every single day.
Mm,
They're measured medical procedure days decided upon with you and your doctors.
yeah, and the best way to describe it, you said it's not a hospital or anything. I just always like to refer it to as a safe space.
Very safe. Yes, yes. That there's they usually have the cushion or like a mattress kind of a little bit off the ground in case you get a somatic experience. Like you wouldn't want to be on a really tall hospital bed and suddenly have a somatic experience and like fall out. You wouldn't want to do that kind of thing. So yeah, definitely very, very comfortable. The antithesis actually of a hospital room. Think of a very comfortable living room with different areas. That's kind of the ideal space, something that's
And that's a good space when you do take, for example, Delta 9 or THC, because you are in your own environment. You are in your own bubble, so you feel safe. If you take it and you go out, you're feeling anxious and nervous galore because you don't know what's going to happen, and your heightened emotions will make you feel more paranoid.
yeah, I'm not really a THC girl, so I can't really speak to that.
But
There
like I s-
is
but like I said, this is
there are
just from what I understand, and I'm not saying anyone's names in particular, so it's not referring to me, but I know it does happen to certain people, and so that's how I'm saying it's just about experience how I've seen certain people.
let's just be super clear to the audience that THC is very different than MDMA.
Exactly.
Okay, there you go. All right.
And that's what the difference is. So going into the present, and obviously you doing this therapy and you as a person, do you feel like it's enlightened the way you see things a lot better now than you have done?
I was suicidal going into my therapy in my late 40s. I'm 55 now. Uh, the therapy showed me that there is a future As a child, I was beaten pretty severely and moved around pretty severely, never really having kind of a home. And that translated as an adult to nothing safe. The rug can be pulled out from under you at any point. You always have to be vigilant. And this therapy basically calmed that. I healed a lot of that inner child stuff. I have continued to work with different psychedelic medicines, to work with my therapist via talk therapy, to heal more of the CPTSD component. In the very beginning, we just labeled it PTSD because it was pretty severe. I
Mm.
was going to make some pretty bad decisions. So I've continued to work. And so where I am at present is a very calm person, very self aware person. I understand my triggers. I continue to unwrap the onion of my mind. That's how I kind of feel every single psychedelic journey with intention. It kind of un it gives another layer of the onion and exposes it and lets you heal. And I'm in a really good place now, and just very, very thankful to my therapist all that many years ago for introducing me to this healing modality.
Yeah, so obviously people want to know more and they can easily search for it. But if they want to reach out to you, can they reach out to you and know more from you direct?
Actually, what happens is, because of my story, because of my background of child abuse, I get a lot of people who reach out who had very similar stories. Absolutely. Thejourneysage.com, head on over to my website. I'm happy to chat. I also have a YouTube channel. When I went through this therapy, there weren't resources. You couldn't read about it because it was still in clinical trial.
Mm.
So even though it's happening underground all the time, there wasn't a lot of information out there. So my YouTube channel is also a great place for people to kind of wander through to get a lot of background about me and get some understanding as to what this therapy is and what it can do. So that's
And
also a
and
resource.
YouTube channel is the Journey Sage as well, I believe.
It is. It is. It is. Yep.
Okay, and I'll make sure both links are in the description afterwards. So
Cool.
going into the latter part and how you see things now, you helping people by being you, and this is a clear thing about, we're not saying this in a medical sense of helping people, but you helping people understand that there is just words of support, words of guidance, words of love, words of self-help that can help others. What would you say to those people on that journey?
I would say learn from me. And while you might initially be skeptical, go do some reading. Go to gov dot, I think it's clinicaltrials.gov or something of that sort. I always mess up that URL. Check out all of the clinical trials going on. You can also just do an internet search and maybe new psychedelic treatment for anxiety. You're going to find that there are 3 psychedelics that our FDA has put on breakthrough status, which means there's nothing else on the market that works as well as the preliminary trials. So my little bit of self-help kind of thing is read up, because if you're suffering or somebody in your life is suffering, there are constant clinical trials going on that you can jump into. You can be very aware of what's happening in terms of our legislation in the US. And if there is a particular psychedelic medication that you're like, hey, wait, I think that could really help because I see it helped XYZ, there are places out of the country where a lot of these medicines are legal. So if you're able to travel, there's more possibility at this particular moment.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's going to be $1 billion business at some point. I think we're going to see some massive changes in the US in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I believe that it's going to be that case too. And I just hope it does help longer term because it's not about the short term and about the era. Like I said, it's about the now and going forward from the now to make it a better place.
Very much so.
And on that, I'd just like to say, Jill, thank you for sharing your journey because it is enlightening to hear that no matter what there is in life, you can be a stronger person by going through the help, going through the ways of means of being able to be yourself by getting the treatment in any form, if it's naturally, the medication that they give you over the counter to talking about MDMA, it's about being yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing deep inside, you don't have to settle for some of the pain or anxiety or depression that's inside you. That this potentially, it doesn't work for everybody. It's also an interesting route for a good portion of our population that is suffering from some mental health issues.
I agree on that. Thank you for sharing your journey today.
Hi, my name is Ammie Harrison. I just published another book, and this is the first hard copy I've released. Let's claw right into a sneak peek. Hi, I'm my Galaxy Brat. Error. It is becoming clearer. Y'all probably think I'm annoying. Turns out they're all just plain boring. I'm just being me, the realest version. Sweet on the inside, tell like it is on the outside. Yes, I embrace love, never hate. But honesty flies in my mouth like a dove. Be careful before it's too late. If you want to read more, visit the link in the description. Meow at you later.
Parsons. The narrator is Kate Barton. Director and producer, Darren Street. Tim Parsons would like to thank family and friends for their support with the paramedic Chris venture. The series is dedicated to the memory of his father, Reverend David Parsons. Copyright Tim Parsons 2020, all rights reserved. Unauthorized use, copying or sharing of this audiobook is strictly prohibited. This has been a Voice Reel studio production for Tim Parsons.
Oh, good afternoon, everyone. I've just been listening to the Paramedic Chris children's books on audio again, and I just love it because they've given a tribute in one of them to my dad as well, who passed away a few years ago. I love audio books, and it's great to walk around, and it's great to sit at the computer, if you're out jogging or wherever, to listen to them as well. All 4 of the Paramedic Chris children's books are available on audio book from Amazon. Go and take a listen to them. You won't be disappointed. You'll hear what happens when a community pulls together and supports one another. The best thing is to pop over to my website, paramedicchriskidsbooks.org, and you'll see the links on the shop page. Keep safe, everyone, and thank you for being you.
The Journey podcast explores stories of personal growth, challenges, and life-changing moments. Each episode dives into unique experiences, offering insights and inspiration for listeners navigating their own paths. I believe everyone has a story worth sharing. If you'd like to share your journey with David and others, email your story to wisewords1983@reborn.com, and it may be featured in a future episode.